The pawnbroker is a Holocaust survivor living in New York City, who struggles to connect with others even though his job offers him constant chances to do so. It's a bold character study with some haunting sequences, so join us for this hard-hitting film by Sidney Lumet. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Money is the whole thing.
The whole thing and nothing but the thing. Yes. Welcome everyone. This is a movie podcast. We are working through Sidney Lumet season here on the Collector's Cut, and this is our third episode of the season. Yes. We are looking at a film today called The Pawnbroker from 1964, which is got a few interesting sort of things about it outside even just the movie itself that we can dive into. But this is a movie about a Holocaust survivor who is living in New York, but in 1964 when the movie's set. Because that's something you have to stop and remember with this type of thing, is that, oh yeah, World War II was only 20 years ago at the time of like when this movie came out. So yes, a lot of, everyone involved, well, not everyone, some people would have been old already, but you know what I mean, a lot of the people involved would just still naturally be alive without much effort. So yeah, I mean, it's notable in that this is apparently one of the first movies made by like Americans to actually depict a survivor of the Holocaust, and that's kind of notable for that reason. I didn't know that when we went into it. I just sort of saw that after I watched it. It was like, oh, this is kind of a big deal, because this was like the first time they tackled that. So yeah,
there's so much in this movie that looking into the trivia, I'm like, oh wow, this is like the first for so many things.
Oh yeah, boobs. there's well,
two big things, in fact.
Well, to be more precise, it's not the first time ever an American movie had boobs per se, but it's the first time in the Code years, the Hays Code years, where boobs were shown because an exception was made because of the significance of the film. And then, funnily enough, that was a domino effect, and the Hays Code was gone by about 1967, 1968.
Yep.
Is when it fell apart.
Good on him.
So thank the pawnbroker for starting that chain reaction that led to all of our violence and nudity that we all so much enjoy in our movies.
Look, I could talk down for like, too much violence for the sake of just violence or whatever, but I'm never going to look down upon boobs. So kudos, pawnbroker.
No. If anything, you look up at them longingly.
Yes, absolutely.
Giant boobs in the sky. That's God for well, men in general, really.
I'd like to welcome anybody this is the first episode that they're stumbling across.
Look, this is going to be a relatively serious discussion once we get into the movie, so I'm just getting a bit silly out the way first. But anyway, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you do enjoy the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. Helps us out a bunch. Give us 5 stars on the podcast apps, all that sort of good stuff. And you can support the show financially via Patreon or YouTube membership and get some bonuses. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, I mean, the basic premise is that, yeah, there's this Jewish man who's now older, living in Manhattan. He lives on Long Island, I think his actual home, but he goes to work in Harlem, and he's got a pawn shop, as the title would imply. And he's very detached from the world. He's very kind of bitter and doesn't really want to connect with anyone, and obviously has a lot of trauma given what he went through. And that's what the movie kind of explores and gets into, and I'll just kind of leave it there. But there's characters around him are trying to reach out to him, more than one in fact, and that's kind of like what the movie mostly focuses on. But that is the gist of it, and we will get into things. I'm just going to assume before I ask the usual question that you have not seen this before, or dare I say, might have even not have heard of it before.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I briefly at one point many years ago I was just interested in the Hays Code. I was interested in like the kind of things that were and were not allowed, but I don't think I ever got to the point of the domino effect, like what were the last days sort of thing. So maybe I would have stumbled across it when I was looking into it there, but I definitely never watched it or knew anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of fun because it's like, oh, when that fell apart, that's when they introduced the MPA's like voluntary rating system, where now we just rate movies and a certain age of audience can go see certain types of things. Because before that, it was just either you're approved for release or you're not. Like, it was pretty binary. There wasn't a whole lot of like depth to it. So
Yeah.
Change for the better. I think most people would agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you and I are a bit into comic books. There's the Comic Code Authority as well. And it basically all seemed to be the same idea of we don't want there to be like laws against our specific industry of what can and cannot go out. So we're going to self-regulate. And then slowly over time, it just makes more and more exceptions. It keeps poking holes until there's nothing left and it just falls apart.
Mm. So yeah, David, what did you think of The Pawnbroker?
I really, really liked it. I think out of the Sidney Lumet season that we've done so far, the first two were obviously based off of plays. They were very, I don't want to say stilted, but they felt very of the time to an extent, and very rehearsed is the main thing. They felt very much like a stage play. This is the first one that I'm going into, and I'm picking back up on like the 12 Angry Men sort of feeling. The feeling that this is more of the era, more specifically what is going on with these people of the time and like the common sentiments going on. And it really hits hard in the way that it films the sequences, and it goes out of its way to really put a visual language to how this man's trauma is represented, how the city is represented, and the way that he feels being around this stuff. Basically, just how his trauma and depression really rear their head, not just for him, but everyone around him. And of course, we'll get into the themes of how that really takes off, but I think it does a masterful job at really exploring it in a way that doesn't feel exploitative. It feels like it's actually trying to say something deeper, maybe not about like Holocaust survivors as a whole or anything like that, but deeper about trauma and how it impacts people around them, not just the person themselves. So yeah, it's great all around. Really enjoy it, and I definitely look forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, this immediately felt like it was swinging a little bit higher than the last movie we did, or the last two even, really. But this one is based on a book, so it is based on something. It's not just an original screenplay, but it definitely feels like we're not confined to a single space, which was never a problem for me, because I love a good bottle story. I love things that are set in one location, because it forces like the writing and direction to be that extra bit special to make it all work and feel dynamic. And it's not like there's a ton of locations here, but there are, scenes out in the streets of New York. There's scenes of like walking around, or there's the sense of all the noise around, and like how that maybe amplifies the loneliness and just how isolated the character is, and all the rest of it. Plus, we get a lot more like guest characters, if you want to call them that, who like pop in just for a scene or two because he works at a pawn shop. So there's naturally customers who come in, and we get a little flavor of various people, but all of them are there to like say something about him, like how he treats them, how he reacts to them, how he deals with things or doesn't deal with them. And the way it chooses to kind of like show the trauma, like the filmmaking choices that are made here, are very interesting, and they're very stark. They're very, it does this thing where it'll do like a quick flash of like a flashback, but it's like a, not even a second. It's like half a second of a flash that just pops up.
Yeah, it's like 3 frames, if even.
It just pops up on the screen for a second, and you sort of blink as if like, oh, did I just have a weird blink or something? And then you sort of, it'll do it a few times, and the repetition lets you kind of get a sense of, no, he's remembering something traumatic that he's been repressing, that's coming back up, kind of thing. And so it feels like a really like ahead of its time story, in the sense that it's tackling the subject with this sense of, with grace. It's doing it in a way that it's not, none of this feels schmaltzy and like Hollywood glossy, and like we're, and this is not to like throw shade at other things or anything. I'm not trying to throw shade at, say, Schindler's List here, right? Because Schindler's List obviously is very important and tells a lot of the story that hadn't been told to a wide audience up until that point. It very much has its purpose, but it definitely wants to feel like a Hollywood presentation by the end, where there's kind of a sentimental quality to it. Where with this movie, it genuinely, and I'm not spoiling one way or the other here, but early on I'm like, I have no idea if this is going to end with some level of growth and like him becoming better, or in tragedy where things get worse, or even his death. Like, I really don't know where this is going, because it feels like it's not confined to any kind of tropes or any kind of expectations. It feels kind of raw in a very real way, which is very refreshing. And as much as I think that the last two movies we did were very, very skillful in their direction, and I think that they were full of solid qualities. I like Fugitive kind of a bit more than Long Day's Journey into Night. You were kind of the flip,
Right.
But ultimately, I think this one feels like, oh no, this feels more special. This feels like it's really aiming for something, and they poured a lot of heart and soul into it. And the performance from the lead actor here, Rod Steiger, or Steiger, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he, I think, obviously adds a lot to this movie, because he is obviously playing this stern, like, trying to hide any emotions and being very stoic the entire time, and or even not even stoic, just like a curmudgeon, like, stern and like piss off and leave me alone. That's very much his attitude. But because he's like that for so much of the movie, when those rare moments come where he does show some kind of emotion, it hits like a ton of bricks. It feels like, oh no, we shouldn't be seeing this. I feel almost uncomfortable seeing this man have like a breakdown moment. So I can only compliment that side of it, like, as much as I possibly can. There's no holding back on that.
Yeah, no, the acting in this is phenomenal. I don't know if I really even have any notes on that, because he does just play this curmudgeonly character that goes out of his way to... So the idea of the pawnbroker, the idea of his character, is that he is essentially this character who people bring him these objects, obviously people who are at low moments in their lives, people who are not able to afford basic things, and they're trying to make some money off of this stuff. And he essentially is just putting a price on things that they treasure so deeply or whatever, and saying like, oh, $2, $1, whatever. And they're like, oh, but it means so much to me. It means whatever. But then you also get that flip side of it, where he sees the side of people who are like trying to pawn off stolen things or whatever. And so he sees like the good and the bad. He sees all this stuff, and he has to deal with it. And the way that, well, I won't spoil anything specifically, but when he describes his view on people to his assistant, it makes it clear that is more so than just like a character thing, more so than as written. The actor himself, you get that across so well. Like, you see it on just little facial tics of how he looks up at people, how he just like moves through a crowd. Even there's so little that he wants to do with some of these people that it really comes through in the performance, even more so than just the character as it's written.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, and honestly, one of my favorite visual things about the movie is that, the pawn shop, and the pawn shop's like, at least to me, a very American thing. I don't think I've ever seen a pawn shop anywhere in the UK. Maybe there's some kind that do exist. There's definitely places where you can trade in specific things, because that store, is maybe an electronics store. You can trade in old electronics, something like that, and get a little bit of money. But like, the idea of the pawn shop and the idea of like, giving something in for a time to get to borrow some money, but then coming to get it back later on, like that, all of this is like completely alien to me. But what I like about it, and this tends to be how it's depicted in movies, at least, and I assume it's somewhat real, is that the level of security in the pawn shop is that like the clerk is behind a cage, right? There's a cage kind of wall to stop people from getting into where he is, where all the items are, and there's just like a little window where you can swap things backwards and forwards. And there's like almost like two layers of cages in the back here. There's kind of a second wall of like the mesh cage where the office area is. And what's so good about this simple choice, and yeah, it's natural because of what his job is, but it means that so many shots in this movie when he's in that pawn shop, he looks like he's in some sort of like self-imposed jail cell. He looks like he's put himself into a prison. And the fact that, when we do get little glimpses, and there's not too much of it, whenever we do get glimpses of him in one of the concentration camp, there's a mesh fence, there's like similar imagery, but this is more self-imposed. This is him shutting himself. It's literally showing him shut himself off to the world and keep a barrier up against anyone who comes to him. It's like, the way they can whenever Lumet wants to, he can choose to shoot through one of those fences so that we see the grid over his face. And sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. But when it's always a conscious choice of like, what does this moment mean? What does this moment mean for the character? Is this a moment where he's putting the walls up? You have the mesh fence in front of his face. Is it a moment where he's showing the glimmer of actually connecting with someone? Oh, shoot him like head on, like actually see his face properly. You know, it's such a simple thing, but he uses it frequently throughout the whole movie.
There's also this recurring thing I was noticing. I definitely saw the cage thing, but there's a thing where even when we're behind the cage, even when we're in the thing, there's like a back office sort of area, and the camera never really goes back there, but he goes back there pretty often. So there's like this physical distance between us as the audience, even when we're behind those cage walls, where he's kept at that arm's length no matter what.
Yeah, and there's times as well when someone's at the desk to talk to him, to pawn something, and he'll kind of talk to them as he's walking around a little bit, and it feels like he's keeping this extra level of distance, or it uses the space in interesting ways and in subtle ways to kind of add to what he's going through or what he's feeling or thinking at the time. So yeah, just really smart stuff, and that's just like one location and how they're using it to enhance the storytelling. On top of, because this movie is black and white, it's 185, and it's which is basically 16:9, close enough anyway, for anyone who's curious what I mean by that. So it has this really interesting kind of look, because I feel like typically most older black and white movies will be when it was still like the 4:3 era, right? Where movies were still that shape. So there's a really interesting little period where some movies, even though, by the 1960s, a lot of movies were just in color, right? It wasn't like that. Yeah. If anything, this is actually an outlier. I mean, I remember Hitchcock making Psycho. Psycho was a few years before this, 1960. Hitchcock chose to shoot that movie in black and white because the news was one of the few things in TV that were still in black and white. And the idea is that the horror of that movie would feel more real because it's in black and white, because it would feel like the sort of thing you'd see on the news. And sometimes it's a budget thing. Maybe it's an artistic choice thing here. It's hard to tell, to be honest, without someone telling me.
Yeah, I'd love to look into Sidney Lumet's, because obviously color has been around for a while now at this point. I don't think it would be, for someone of Sidney Lumet's like skill and talent after 12 Angry Men, I think if he wanted to shoot in color, he probably could. It feels to me like he came up and like learned his craft through the black and white era, and maybe he just feels more comfortable in it, but I have nothing to back that up.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a comfort thing. Maybe he just, at least at this time, preferred it. I mean, because it's worth mentioning, all three of the movies we've done this season so far have been black and white. So he clearly is returning to that. Now, whether or not it's because it's like a cost-saving measure, maybe he still feels, maybe this is the sort of example where, everyone's switching to color, but he's kind of old school because he's like, he prefers it because it's what he grew up with and what he was, learning to make movies on or whatever. But regardless, we're still kind of, he's still making black and white movies at this point. Maybe that'll change for the next one. I don't know, but we'll find out. So, no, but the movie's gorgeous. The movie's like very often quite pretty to look at, and and not pretty in the way that it's glamorous, because it's not meant to be glamorous. It's it's not the most nice looking neighborhood in New York that the shop's in. There's a lot of people hanging about on the streets. There's a brothel just down the street, that kind of thing. Where he lives with like his sister-in-law and her husband, which is a really weird sentence to say because her husband's not his brother. His brother died way back when, but he's still quote-unquote close. I say that because he's not really close with anyone, but he's still, around her. He's
providing for the family. Yes. He's still, like, monetarily, he's still a provider there.
Yeah. Honestly, if anything, I'm surprised because that opening scene with him and this side of the family, like, it felt like it was setting up these two teenager characters that are his nephew and his niece, and I thought that this family unit were going to feature in the movie, like, because they were setting them up, and then we never see them again for the entire of the film. It's just, they're just gone after that.
Yeah, I will say, reading the Wikipedia article for the book that it's based off of, just this last sentence here says the novel details the relationship with Saul's nephew, a troubled young man whom he achieves a bond. So maybe that was a subplot. That was something that like maybe they thought about including, but didn't end up doing.
Interesting. Yeah, because it does feel like they set those characters up, especially the nephew, because they even give him like a little like character beat in that opening scene. And I just wonder if did they shoot some of this subplot and decide to take it out, but they just kept this in because they liked it as an introduction to our main character, or well, I don't know. Curious.
I mean, that might have been something that they did have to make a thing for the Hays Code. Maybe that was something where they were like, yeah, you have this boy drawing pictures of naked ladies. That ain't gonna fly. We can't be doing that.
Maybe. It didn't sound like they had to cut out much, though. It sounds like when to get approved for the Hays Code, they just had to trim a little bit of the scenes that had nudity in them. Like just shorten them a little bit. That's what it sounded like when I read the write up on it. But regardless, the movie like it focuses on a few key relationships that he has. There's a guy that works for him, a young Puerto Rican man named Jesus Ortiz. He is got a little bit of a history with crime, but he's trying to go straight and narrow for his mother, for his girlfriend, and he is really enthusiastic about learning how to be a good pawnbroker. So he's always trying to reach out in kind of a sort of almost surrogate son kind of role. There's other people that take an interest in him, and we see how our main character, Saul Nazarman is his name. We haven't really mentioned that yet, but
yeah, SOL. I've never seen that spelling before.
No, I can't say I have. The only time I can think of seeing that is the son is called that, right?
Yeah.
SOL, Saul. That's the son.
That's like a Latin name, maybe Greek. I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah. So, anywho, yeah. I mean, I think we're probably ready to start talking about the movie. Do you want to bring up anything else before we get into spoilers?
Not really. I will say this did have a very well done score. It's a little bit more jaunty, a little bit more jazzy than the previous two movies have been. And during certain sequences, which are very traumatic for the characters, that is something that was really taking a forefront. It was really adding to the emotionality of the moment, and just wanted to call out that I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, it was definitely one that I definitely noticed the music in this more than either the previous two. And it was definitely ramping up a lot more towards the back chunk of the movie as well, where it was really making its presence felt. So, no, worth mentioning. So spoilers for The Pawnbroker. From this point on, you have been warned. We're going to get into it. I mean, it's interesting coming to this, and it's very much a character study of a movie. It's a study of this main character, and like you said earlier, it's about trauma. It's about how that trauma is consuming his life in many ways, how it's affecting those around him, either because they want to be close to him or they already are, and like there's almost like a knockback effect where he's negatively affecting them because of how he is. But at the same time, because of what he went through, I don't think you can ever blame him. There's never a moment where you go, oh, just lighten up, dude. Like, it's like what he went through was so goddamn horrific and inhumane that most people will never have to experience, that you can't even question him.
I love that bit at the end of Schindler's List where there's that huge line of people approaching his grave, and then someone's at the front going like, "What, guys, chill out. What's the big deal?" Like, that's clearly the apex of the movie.
Very, very funny, I guess. I don't know what you were going for there, but
no, I mean, he's just saying like, it's not something that the movie, I think, is super interested. Not interested, it's the wrong word. It's not focused on the fact that he is a Holocaust survivor specifically. I think that this same story could have worked for any majorly traumatic event, but it uses the backdrop of the Holocaust as this deeper understanding that, like, everyone, at least I'm assuming, I don't know about general audiences, but I assume everyone kind of understands the horrors that went on. It's not like they have to explain the event itself. Actually, there's just kind of this blanket level.
No, I need to jump in here because you're kind of wrong about this. In 1964, no, that's not entirely true. because I believe there was a big documentary in the 70s that kind of really made it a lot more well known to a lot of the world. So I'm not knowledgeable enough to like get really specific here, but I do believe that the general like public, the actual knowledge of what the Holocaust was and what they had done over those years was not actually like that well known. I feel like it's more well known today because we get taught it in school, because things like Schindler's List exist. Like we're all pretty relatively well versed on it. We understand those horrors. I don't think it was. I mean, and they kind of make that point in the movie actually, because Ortiz, says, "Oh, what's that those numbers on your arm?" And he's like, "Hey, is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's is it some kind of secret society?" And he's like, "In a manner of speaking." And then he follows up with the most insensitive response, and he doesn't do it intentionally because he doesn't know what they are. He's just taking Saul at his word. Ortiz responds with, "Oh, how do I get to join?" And it's like, I can't believe you just said that. That is like horrific, and you don't know it. It's not his fault, but it's horrific to hear that.
Well, I took that as Ortiz and other characters who are a little bit insensitive about this stuff as just being, this is in the hood, it's in Harlem. I took it as being like less educated. They're a bit more street oriented than like actually being taught things in school. But the reason I assume that it was more generally is because I was aware of the history that when the camps were discovered and all that, tons of pictures were taken with the idea of, we're going to make sure everyone knows this was going on. So I assume that was disseminated, but if you have evidence to the contrary, then yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's I'm sure there's a layered like history to this where, but I think the idea of the general public being like knowledgeable about it was actually something that didn't quite come till a bit later. I think that's partly why this movie was probably quite notable when it was made, because a big part of it is like, hey, there's people living with these horrific experiences that they've went through, and that's kind of part of the point. So as much as I get what you're saying by proposing that you could do a lot of this story with a different like past that's just as traumatic in some ways, I think part of the point is that it's here to kind of show what people went through in the Holocaust. So it's like I don't think the book, when it was written, would have ever like entertained the idea. It probably started with, this is about this type of person, and then explored trauma from that point on, rather than saying, I've got this to say about trauma, I'm going to start there, and then I'll use that. It's convenient to use that, so I'll use it. I don't think it was that way around.
No, definitely not. Especially the original book, definitely no doubt. I'm just saying the way that the movie handles it, like there's nothing inherently in here that feels like it needs to be the Holocaust, but it is used advantageously. And I'm not saying that like it's being schlocky about it or like taking advantage of the idea of using this as like something to just further a character along as like a prop. It is cooked into the character. It is made a part of him, but it doesn't, like, if you were an audience member and if you 100% did not know that this was an actual real event or something like that, I think you could easily just assume, okay, this is a fictional event that happened in this movie's universe, but it didn't need to be something that actually really, really happened.
I don't know. I don't know if I completely agree.
I get what you're saying. I know. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like so much of it is baked into what the movie is, that and what the original story is, that I don't. Like, you can make a lot of the same points about trauma, certainly, but I don't think you could do this particular story without that backstory of the main character. Because it's enlarged, especially since this idea of like just living in a normal world where no one's really like, it's not quite the same thing, right, by any stretch, as like, Vietnam vets coming back and like being shunned, right, when they were in war. But this idea of like no one else knows, like, well, because wasn't like the whole thing with Lord of the Rings is that he was writing, Tolkien was writing about his experiences of like coming back after World War One, and it was like him and his friends who had been like fighting together overseas. They're like, everyone else just doesn't know how horrific like our lives just were, and they're acting like everything's normal, and we're supposed to just act like the world's back to normal, right? And again, not the exact same as what this main character Saul's went through, but that idea that like he's just living in the normal world, and like has to remember all these things. And a big part of the character, of course, is that he is clearly tried to repress, and he says that at one point, that he is tried to leave all the memories behind at a certain point. But the reason why they keep kind of coming back up in the course of the movie, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons, is that the anniversary of his wife's death during the Holocaust is about to hit. There's a big point early on made about the calendar hitting a certain date, and he doesn't want to see that date on the calendar. So yeah. So it's super fascinating stuff. There's a lot of character building here for sure. So yeah, but yeah, he's not the most sympathetic to others, it's fair to say, in his pawnbroking life, or even in the opening scene with his family, where the sister-in-law comes up to him and says, "Hey, we're thinking about making a trip to Europe. Do you want to come to Europe with us?" And the kids really want to go, and like he's like, "Europe? Why do I want to go to Europe?" Like he's very. And obviously for him, the idea of going back to Europe, like he fled to the other side of the planet for a reason, because too many bad memories are on that side of the Atlantic. So, but it does a good job of setting up the character's demeanor, how he is, and then I will say I did get a little bit confused when it introduced this other place that he goes with it's effectively, I think, kind of his mistress, but like. It's not the most, like, it's not the sexy relationship by any stretch.
So from what I gathered that relationship was, and I think there is a theming reason for it, is that this is the wife of either a friend that he had before all of the war stuff, or he made during like the concentration camp stuff. He made like in the camps, he met someone and like tried to remain friends with them. And what the dialogue reveals is that after his friend died, they kind of took solace in each other. They took comfort in each other. They did end up sleeping with each other at some point. But her father is still alive, and he absolutely disapproves of that because it's like dishonoring the old husband. It's dishonoring his memory and all that, because in his eyes, she's still married to him. But what I think theming wise is so important here is that she seems to have the same kind of guilt that he does. She has the same sort of like unwilling to do anything. And the fact that they can both take in solace with each other, they can not even open up to each other, because again, it's a very closed off relationship, but they can both exist around each other in this same sort of, the world is separate from the rest of them, and they're able to just relax with each other to some extent.
Yeah, I would avoid the word solace, I think, just because it doesn't, like, because especially later on, because I mean, just to stick to their plot, like as a pair, is that there's not much of it really. Ultimately, her dad, who has been sick, the whole time, he eventually passes away, and she calls him, Saul, at his work, and says, "Oh, my dad died," and he basically just goes, "Oh, so he's dead then? What do you want me to do?" And she's like, "Well, like, come over, please," and like we can. And she's basically looking for someone to come and help her with arrangements and just be like there for her, shoulder to cry on, whatever. And he basically just poo-poos that, and it kind of reveals that, like, it's like the part that I think you said that is bang on is just this idea that they can sit there and play cards, because it's not like when we see them, I call her his mistress because they have had sex seemingly in the past, but it's not like they're meeting up for lover entanglements or having a romantic night of passion or whatever. They just sit there and play cards, read simultaneously, whatever. And it's just this idea that this is like one of the only people he knows he can be in a room with who has the same type of experience, and therefore he's not having to close up or put on a show for her, even though he's still not opening up to her in any great way either. It's not like he's like unloading his feelings or being vulnerable. He's still keeping a wall up with her, but there is like a reason why he spends time with her as opposed to, wherever else he could be going.
And that's why the when the dad dies, that's such a big moment, and showing what kind of character he has with her is that their relationship is built off of this guilt that they share, the idea that both of them went through this emotionally traumatic stuff, and neither of them really are trying to heal. Neither of them are really trying to move past it in any way. They're just trying to, move past it technically, but just bury it down. They're not trying to really deal with their trauma in any healthy way. So when she comes and needs help, she wants to open up about this trauma and have someone to talk to. That's when he's like, you're breaking the rules of what this was between us. I'm not doing that. Go away. And he just hangs up on her.
Yep. It's very cold. It's fairly late in the movie when that part happens, but it just made sense to capture that all in one chunk. Because when we see him at work and we see him like just, people come in saying, oh, this is real gold, this is what that, and he's like, $1, it's fake. Like, I'll give you $1 for it. It's like $2, and he gives out whatever, this, that, and that. And he's clearly not being sympathetic to any of their needs. And not that I'm saying he should. The pawnbroker has to actually be careful about what he's giving out for certain items, of course. But it definitely shows you how he treats people. He's not sympathetic with how he breaks the news to them. He's just very, no, $2, that's it. Like, take it or leave it.
It's very late in the movie, but there's this woman who comes in. She's clearly super down on her luck, and she's offering up her diamond ring and saying, like, I just, I need some money against this. I would like something. And he's like, it's glass. It's worthless. It's not going to do anything. And you can just see her face break in front of him because she's like, he told me it was a diamond. Like, he told me that this was this, and he has no sympathy. He just is just like, no, it's like, I'll give you $1 for it. Like, that's all it's worth. And she just saunters out very sadly. And it's this heartbreaking scene for her, but you get, up until this point, all the stuff he's been through that makes him so cold to these people and makes him absolutely see them as just separate from him on a base human level.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the one that comes in early on that has more of a through line throughout the movie is Mrs. Birch, or Miss Birchfield, I guess, who comes in and is basically looking for like charity donations or like, supporting local youth groups and things like that. And he kind of just like agrees to like write a check to get rid of her as quickly as possible. Like, he's happy to just like say bye. But she's like trying to be nice. She's trying to like talk to him, and she kind of like gets a little bit pissed at him during this scene and leaves in a little bit of a cold note. But not too long later, like the next day or whatever, she comes back in and she's like, "Hey, I came to apologize. I acted all sorts, and I want to invite you to lunch." And he's like, "You must be joking." Like, he almost pissed at her that she'd dare even suggest such a thing, and she's like, "No. I'm free Wednesday, I'm free Thursday. Which day would suit you best? I'll make some sandwiches and I'll have lunch with you in the park." And he's like, and he doesn't want to say yes, but he eventually, again, just to end the conversation, goes, "Oh, whatever day is fine. Like, just be gone with you." And so, which then leads to their scene where she comes over with the lunch bag, and he's like, "Oh yes, I guess I forgot about this," but she insists on sitting down with him, and she actually flat out says, "Oh, you were in a concentration camp." Like, she recognizes that, and she starts to try and talk to him about it. This is one of the moments actually in the movie where I thought the subtle camera work was doing a lot here, where he's in the foreground in one bench and she's in the other bench, like looking over at him, but he's like right up in her face, uncomfortable, so you can see just how uncomfortable he is as she's asking these questions, because his face is like right up to the, almost like he's pushing against the lens.
Yeah. It's a beautiful little character sequence because it absolutely sets up this character who, up until this point, his curmudgeonliness has managed to push everyone away, or at least gotten them to stop trying to be as close. But then we introduce this new character who is just unrelenting. It's just like, nope, you need a friend, and that's what I'm here for. And she just keeps going. And this is the first sequence where she's opening up. She's saying about her previous husband who died, and how I can't remember exactly how it died, but it was something close. And she's basically saying like, "Oh, I can relate to you. I understand that, like, the loss of family and stuff like that." And he's immediately manages to get to the core and says, "You don't know me at all. Like, you have absolutely no way that you can relate to the level of pain and trauma I went through in that." In fewer words, obviously, because he's barely speaking to her, but that's what he basically gets across. And she sees that, like, is it worth trying to get through to this guy if he's just going to be this cold?
Yeah, I mean, she's trying to be nice. She's trying to form a friendship, maybe even a relationship. And, he shoots her down. And this seems to convince her. This basically gets her to back off. And it's actually not until later in the movie where he goes through something where he is actually almost pushed into, oh, I need someone to talk to and open up to a little bit, almost like he's finally like willing to try a little bit, and that's when he ultimately goes to her place, and they end up like sitting out on her balcony and opening up a little bit more. And like it's like, I think that's like interesting that like that he even does that at that point in the movie, because it's almost like, oh, maybe is he going to kind of finally take a slightly healthier route? Is he finally realizing that maybe he does need to connect with someone? And is that giving you false hope? And I mean, I think the actual end of the movie is very ambiguous as to whether or not he's learned like some kind of lesson where he, what is his approach to life going to be after the end of this movie? I think that's very open for interpretation at the end.
Absolutely. It's I mean, we'll get to it because it's majorly the Jesus Ortiz plot line that covers that. But
I'm saving that for last because that's the big meaty one.
But yeah, no, his entire thing up to this point is survivor's guilt. It's this idea that he survived, no one else in his family did, save for a few people, obviously. And the aspect that he's getting to with her is basically because of something going on with his pawn shop, which again is a separate plot. We see him feeling fear. And that's the thing, is like the feelings that he's getting in relation to that are triggering all these other memories of him in the camp. And it's all these other things going on. And I don't know if this is the first time this has been happening, if this happens like to some extent every year on the anniversary of his family's death. But this time around, it's really hitting him hard. And he's just having to open up to her because it's the only way that he sees the ability to get through this at all. But during their talk, there's one bit that really got me from a camera perspective, and I guess writing, is they are sitting out on the balcony, they go back inside, and she says something along the lines of like, you've opened up to me. I see how deep your pain runs. I see you for as you truly are. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to reach you. And then she literally extends her hand across the frame. Yeah. And he just doesn't move. He doesn't take it. He doesn't do anything. And it's just visually that's saying exactly where they're at, of like, all of these characters, her especially, have been reaching out, trying to reach you, but you're not making that extra move to meet them halfway. You're not going to their point.
I would just point out one extra little detail here. It's not just that the scene cuts away with her hand still out. She holds it out for some time. He doesn't like reach his hand out. He doesn't even really turn to look at her. And she eventually accepts defeat and pulls her hand back. Like, I think that's an important detail here, is that you see the moment where she's like, he's not going to take it. Like, she's admitted that this might be too much for her to really like be enough for, but she's still willing to try. It makes her putting the hand out all that more important. And then he's just not willing to accept it. And again, after the end of the movie, you could argue that maybe he's like had a bit of a shock, and maybe he will go back and ask if that hand still reached out, and maybe he'll try, but we don't know for sure, right? So that stuff is great. The character building is absolutely phenomenal. And when we get back to like the kind of what I would say is the A plot, I mean, all of his stuff is the A plot, of course. And I should mention, because we've not brought this up yet, but there is like the opening scene of the movie before we see him in present day. There was a scene where he's having, and I didn't even realize, like, in the opening scene, because we hadn't seen the main character yet, so I didn't know it was necessarily him yet. And when we see like the end of this scene later, when it goes back to it, I'm like, oh, I can tell it's the younger version of him now, but I didn't initially, because he looks so different.
It focuses on like his kids and then his wife, and then like I'm assuming some grandparents or something related to that, and then you finally see him, but he's got like a full head of dark hair, no mustache, anything like that, and he's embracing the kids, and you're like, okay, who am I focusing? Is our main character going to be one of these kids? But is our main character going to be someone else? It's
all happy. It's in slow motion. They're in like a by the lake, and they're having a picnic, and it's all very kind of like almost dreamlike happy. And obviously, it's quite clear, even just at the end of this scene, you don't see what they're looking at, and they all start looking worried. It's very easy to predict what it is. And I feel like you realize that, oh, this is the last day of his life that he was happy. This is the last time he was happy, was this day. And obviously, that's like super sad in and of itself. But
Yeah, we don't get to see what it is, but I do believe in that opening sequence. There's like, it's all very dreamlike, and then there's a sudden loud bang noise, and that's like kind of where it cuts off. Is this jarring note of saying the dream is over, we're in reality now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the big thing is that Ortiz is working for him, and we see him with his mother, and he's promising that he'll not, do any crimes. He'll go and work hard. And to be fair, he's very enthusiastic. He keeps an upbeat energy. He tries to constantly talk to Saul as if like, oh, you're my teacher and I want to learn from you. And he's always trying to be friendly. Like, again, much like the woman who's trying to reach out to him, it does feel like he's genuinely trying to make Saul feel like he's his friend because he wants him to feel that way. So he's super likable and he's trying to reach out to him. And Saul's very short with him. He's very kind of stern and whatever. But he does, there are moments early on where he does agree, okay, I'll teach you the how to test gold. And he's like, hey, you rub this on this and you put a little chemical here, and like if it does this, it's silver. If it does this, it's actually, bronze or whatever. And it feels like he is kind of giving into the constant requests a little bit.
Yeah, I like the bit that Ortiz is basically not trying to get through to him as a friend, not trying to like get through the trauma or whatever. At first, it's more of the respect. It's the idea of, I've just been running little robberies and like lotto numbers, stuff like that. I haven't been making an honest living. Here's this guy who owns his own business, has been making an honest living, and I idolize that. I want to be like this man. And so he's trying to get whatever advice he can on like, hey, walk me through your business, like show me like how you do it. And he's very naive, I guess is the right word. He's very like, basically he says a lot of things that, like we said, the numbers on the arm, he doesn't know what that means. And he's very brash with asking like, oh, how do I get those? And then later on, he makes a comment of basically saying like, hey, how are you people so good at business? Playing up a very Jewish stereotype of that. And it results in a great explosive scene from Saul. I love that sequence, but it's the thing where obviously he's well-meaning. He's not saying these things out of an actual like racism or hatred or anything like that, but he just doesn't know better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it kind of contrasts with Saul where, like, I mean, it makes it very clear that Jesus is... because he's got a black girlfriend. We see that fairly early on, right? And he's very kind of loving and flirty with her. We also find out she's a prostitute and actually works for someone that we've already seen by that point in the movie. We'll get to that in a minute. But
yes,
he like even accuses Saul of maybe being racist at one point because like there's one guy that comes in and he, after the guy leaves and Saul's in a particularly bad mood at this point, says, "Oh God, these creatures like coming in here, like what makes them act this way?" And like Ortiz hears this and says, "Wait, why did you call him a creature? Was it because he was black?" And he's like, "It's like he's really like, did you just say something really racist?" And he's like, "No, it's not because he's black. I don't care. I look at everyone that comes in here the same. They're all scum. They're all just like really his worldview needs a little bit of work."
Right. Yeah. No. That entire sequence, like that line reading, basically, I just love and hate because obviously it doesn't make you like the character anymore, but I love the way it's written where he's like, no, I'm not racist. I don't care about any man's religion, race, anything like that. I hate everyone. Everyone sucks. They're all the worst. And it's like, oh, I don't know if that's better. Like, yes, you're not discriminatory, but you're also just a dick.
Yeah. But again, like, I don't blame him though. Like in a weird way, no. Like he's got so much goddamn trauma. He just does not want to trust anyone. He doesn't want to see like that's like part of the sadness of what he's went through is how how it basically killed who he was. Like he may not have died in the camps, but he effectively killed the person he was, and what's left is this like empty shell who just does not want to connect with anyone in any meaningful level.
Yeah, so that's part of the big thing that he gives Jesus at one point. Jesus is, after he says, like, how are you guys so good with money? He basically says a full long breakdown, and I won't give the whole thing, but he basically says, like, look, Jewish people have never been allowed to really have anything. They've always been forced out of like homelands and stuff like that. And he manages to translate that over into, and that's why like you never waste a penny. You always just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to get more and more, because you never know when it's all going to just be taken away. And so he basically has morphed that into the worldview of, you don't worry about your like I won't say you don't worry about your family. You provide for them, you do that, but you don't worry about luxuries. You don't worry about like going on vacations. You don't worry about that stuff. You just focus on accumulating more money, because that's all he sees anymore. Is that's his goal in life, is just get more money.
Yeah, which reminds me actually, when I think it's when the girl with the ring comes in, but he has those flashes of like all like at the camps, like all the hands up in the fence, and like the Nazis just taking the rings off of everyone. So again, it's one of those moments where you just start getting these quick moments. There's, you know, I think one of the first ones that happens is when he sees someone getting beat up outside, and he starts having flashes back to the camp. Like, it's just these quick. You know, there's one or two notable moments where you get like a full scene in the camp, but for the most part, it is just these quick spurts of just a quick visual that's very suggestive. And because it is like a stab to the eyes, because it is just this flash of an image. It hits like almost like it's probably hitting him, like it's trying to emulate how he's feeling in the moment. Not just in terms
That's what I'm saying. It's such a great visual language for trauma. It's this thing that inserts itself when you don't, like, it's an intrusive thought. You don't want to be thinking about this, but once you start, it just keeps coming back and keeps on flashing over and over again until you can eventually just let it settle and let it move on.
So one of the big things, though, tying into this Ortiz plot, is the people that he used to work with was this small gang, a trio of characters who, when they enter the pawn shop, like in the first act or so, like, I love how just showing a shot looking up at them, like it's basically doing the it's like a chest cam shot, but the camera's not on their chest, it's on the front of this lawnmower they're pushing. So it's looking up from the front of this lawnmower, and it's like perfectly like still with the lawnmower. So it's super intimidating, and it kind of feels like, wait, why do I get the feeling they're going to like pick that up and try and kill him with it? But
because they're talking about it like, oh, brand new with all these shiny sharp blades that can cut through anything. It's like, okay, you're menacing.
But you immediately get there's a past relationship with Ortiz, because Ortiz looks at them and feels clearly uncomfortable that this is the sort of people that he's trying to get away from. And they come up, and immediately Saul's like, where did you get this? Is this stolen property? Like, he's immediately like saying this. And, you know, the way they're talking, it kind of sounds like, yeah, it probably is stolen, because it feels like they're being really cheeky with the way they're talking about it. And he ultimately, like, after a bit of deliberation, quietly that is, he just kind of pauses for a minute, and then he says, I'll give you $30. And it feels like he knows that this is probably stolen, and he knows he's not supposed to accept it, but at a certain point, like, does he want to have the fight? Like, is it worth having that conflict and trying? You know, this will keep the peace. Just hand him the money, and you know,
I'm not even so sure that it is keeping the peace from his side. I'm sure that's part of it, but at the same time, like, he could have undersold them. He could have said like $15. He could have done whatever to try to get them out without actually pawning it. But I think it is more so from this viewpoint of, he knows even if it's stolen, like, because the very first thing he does when he gets it in is he tells Jesus, hey, give me the serial number. Like, I'm going to check against the cops' stolen stuff, and we're going to just find out if this thing is stolen or not. But I feel like it does come back to that idea of like, look, stolen or not, whatever it is, to a certain extent, he is trying to say money is money. Like, I am going to be able to sell this. I am going to be able to do whatever. So as much as it is keeping the peace, I do think there is that low level of cynicism of whatever.
Oh, sure.
It makes no difference to me where it comes from.
Yeah, but I think the important part, though, is that it takes a little bit of thinking to get to that. Like, I think there's like almost a moment in the thought process of like, do I make the stance? Do I morally try and not do this? And then he gives up and says, well, you know, like you say, money's money, and just sort of like says it avoids conflict. I can still sell it, but do I try and do the right thing? And I think part of the sadness of the character is that he's had it beaten out of him. That what's the point of trying to do the right thing with how the world's treated them?
Well, that's during that opening sequence where he gets a bunch of customers coming in, there's people who are coming in that seem generally kind, who seem like they're just like, yeah, we'll do what we can, we'll whatever else like that. Like people who are taking their stuff, pawning it for money. And you can tell that there's a difference between how Sol treats them to how he treats the jumpier people, the more aggressive people who are trying to like scam him out of whatever money. And those are the people where he kind of just like, get out of the store, like I take the money, here's $1, just get out of here. And he treats them with disdain that is, I think, of a greater caliber than the other people. Like the one guy who comes in and pretty much all he wants to do is just make conversation with Sol. Like he's just trying to talk to him in a kind way that you would just talk to a shopkeeper. Sol gives him the time of day in that whatever it is he's trying to pawn, he's like, yeah, okay, here you go, whatever. And he puts up with him talking. But later on in the movie, he comes back just looking for conversation. He doesn't have anything to pawn. And this is after Sol's gone through a lot more stuff recently. And he just chews him out. And he tells him, like, you're an idiot. Get out of my store. Like, all that stuff. And it feels a lot more vitriolic like he treats those other guys.
Yeah, so to get back to the trio of the gang here for a second, because obviously it feels like a big deal we've introduced them, and then when we see Ortiz on his own or with his girlfriend, sort of away from work, and like they're flirting, he's talking about opening his own pawn shop someday. He wants to do that. He wants to have his own business, and saying, hey, and we find out she's a prostitute, and he's like, hey, I'll take you away from that, and we can go and live a life, whatever. And it's okay, very hopeful and all that. But when they get to their seats in this club that they're in, they just happen to be sitting in front of this trio of characters that we saw earlier, the villains, if you will. And like immediately the leader of the group starts taunting him and starts saying things and like, oh, you're working at the pawn shop, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it does kind of feel like it's all about goading him back into their, life of crime and so on. And they start making fun of the pawn shop and saying, oh, you're wasting your time at the pawn shop peddling $1 here, $1 there. Oh, it's pathetic. And Ortiz turns and says, wow, we took in like $5,000 in the safe just before I left today. And then as soon as he says it, I think you can see in his eyes, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that to these criminals.
I had that moment. The moment he said that, I paused and I'm like, you've doomed us, Jesus. You've killed the man.
Yeah, I thought that was a really, really well done moment. But he's with his girlfriend after and they seem very happy. And it's like making you like Jesus. He's good with his mother, he's good with his girlfriend, and he's good with Sol, even though Sol makes it difficult to be good with him. He's always trying.
And that's Jesus's plot is he keeps on trying to work with Sol. He keeps on trying to like learn the business, do whatever. But as Sol keeps on having these more and more difficult moments, these flashes back and whatnot, he gets more and more cut off and he keeps on pushing Jesus away. He keeps on saying very hurtful things. And at a certain point, Jesus is like, maybe I should just take the easy way out here. And I know there's a bunch of money in that safe. I know my guys would be able to get to it. We can just take the money. And he's clearly having a very deep moral conflict of he wants to be on the straight and narrow. But every single time Sol pushes him, he just goes further and further and further down that path.
There's a moment after the big blow up, I think it is, where Sol like chews him out, where he just storms off to those guys and doesn't actually tell them what the plan is or that he's definitely going to do something, but he just floats that he's thinking about it. And that, these are the conditions if I agree to like let you guys in on something, is that, no shooting. So it's like, okay, even if he's turning to crime, he's been very adamant that like, no one's to get hurt. Like he's like still a good character ultimately. But, he wants startup money to go start his business and all that. And his girlfriend even, again, making her kind of likeable, is she's like saying, hey, I'll take some extra customers like behind the pimp's back this week and try and earn some extra money, which, is kind of a wild like offer when you think about it, but she's like, hey, I want to be in this with you, I want to do this.
She also recognizes how dangerous it is. She's like, if he finds out, I'm going to get beaten within an inch of my life.
So, and there's even a sequence where she comes to the pawn shop and she's like, hey, I want to pawn some things that customers have given me as gifts. And she's doing this because she wants to get the money for Ortiz, right? And Ortiz doesn't know she's here. She's done this independently on her own. And she comes to the shop and she's like, hey, this, can I like pawn this? And he looks at the ring or whatever it is, and he's like, oh, $20, right? And she's like, oh, come on, this is worth more than that. Like this paid for a whole session, and so on and so on. And we end up getting to a couple of key moments here, right? Because this scene leads to a reveal about a character who we've not really mentioned too much yet, but we'll get to him in a second. It gets to a proper full flashback, revealing kind of the most significant details about his family, his direct family, his wife and his children, but especially his wife in this particular one, because this woman, Ortiz's girlfriend, who effectively says, hey, can I like offer my services for more money, and like tries to kind of like proposition. I mean, he's not even looking at her, but she's like, oh, I'm going to take my clothes off so you can, see the goods. And
he's already in a full traumatic flashback at this point, but she is only making it worse, as we discover.
But when he looks at her and she's standing there naked, he flashes back to seeing his wife naked when they were in the camps, because the Nazis forced him to look at the fact that they were assaulting her, right? The Nazis were just, you assume that was happening at the camps, pretty widespread, as the Nazis would just go to whoever they wanted, and, how are they going to fight back? So it's like, hey, this is what she was going through until she died. And this is all coming back to him as this woman is trying to make this offer to him. So, like, that's a big deal in and of itself, and it's a really harrowing sequence. And you feel bad for everyone in this scene, because at the end of the scene, when he just picks up her coat and like covers her up and hands her the $20 that they said he'd give her for the thing, like, she looks upset, and like, it's not even so much, I don't think she's upset that she's been rejected in that kind of sense. I think she's just upset because she thought this was a way she could help Ortiz, and she feels like she's failed in achieving that mission. And I think you feel bad for her. You obviously feel bad for him, because just when you think, oh, not that I thought he was being a dick to her, because he's clearly just in a bad mental place when she comes in, but because he keeps saying worse and worse things, right? Where he's a bit more unlikable, but then this is like, but you can't really, like, we're seeing just how bad the experience was, just how rough it was, and just how layered it is. Yeah, that it's impossible to not feel sorry for him as well as her in the scene. So, you come out of this just feeling bad for everyone.
Yeah, this is pretty much the halfway point in the movie, and I do think this is the turning point for him, where up until this point, he has just been saying all of these things. He's had the occasional flashback, he's been a little bit separated out, but this moment, it's back to back where he gets the call about his friend's wives, whatever, the mistress, as you called her, the dad dying, and that is simultaneously happening while this woman is trying to get money for Ortiz. So it's a lot hitting him all at once, but immediately after this, we'll get to this plot line, he has a crisis of conscience. He tries to like fix up things, tries to not be as in debt to this mob guy that's going around. And then from there on, he just keeps tumbling down this like trauma rabbit hole where he's just, everywhere he goes, he's seeing like little reminders, things that are throwing him back into that time.
Yeah, because the reveal in the scene, the other thing with this girlfriend character, Ortiz's girlfriend, is that it turns out she's working for a man named Rodriguez, who we have met, because Rodriguez, it turns out, is kind of working with Saul. Saul has agreed to sort of like help launder money at his pawn shop for this guy. And he does this. We see this early on, and this is actually what the $5,000 in the safe came from. It came from this criminal. But the reveal here is that he's like, wait, you work for Rodriguez? And she's like, yeah, just down the street. He actually starts to, like, this is his crisis of conscience, as you called it, is that he finds out that Rodriguez is running brothels, and he's not comfortable with that. He's not comfortable that the money he's helping launder is coming from that type of activity. So he goes to see Rodriguez. But actually, one of the things I read about the movie as well is that it's maybe the first American movie with a gay character in it. I don't know how true that may or may not be, but it's this character of Rodriguez. I didn't even, I think, notice that he was gay until I read that after and said it must have been him because he was living with a man. Yeah.
It's absolutely something that it's, as horrible as it is to say, because we're 60 years later, it's the Disney version of gay, where it's like he's living with a man, but it's not like it's part of the story. It's not something where it's part of even his character, and that's fine. Like they are just normal human people. It doesn't have to be something flamboyantly over the top or anything, but it absolutely is also something that is just kind of thrown in there as a little extra flair and not something that is inherently necessary to the character, which arguably I am going to make the point that it is a little bit weird that arguably the biggest villain in the movie, the one who is the most like evil out of all other characters, is also one of the first gay characters. That is just kind of a bit weird.
I mean, I don't know what you read into that, honestly. Especially since I don't think it was like abundantly clear that that's exactly what was going on, to the point where I never even thought about it until I read that fact afterwards and went, oh, I guess it was them. I guess they were the gay characters. Right. But and nothing ever really stuck out in the movie as being specific to that. I think the reveal, though, that him going to see him and saying, hey, like, you know, and you know, he's obviously a much bigger talker, this Rodriguez. He kind of talks in monologues for a little bit until he's eventually, okay, why are you here? What's up? What's going on? And he's like, hey, you run some brothels, right? You and he's like, oh, maybe I do. But if the answer is yes, then what of it? Like, what's going on? And he basically just says, like, I'm not comfortable taking money from that type of thing. Like, I don't want to help you anymore, and we're done. And by this point in the movie as well, Rodriguez has been asking him to sign some papers, and we never find out, I don't think, what these papers are for, like what he's signing. But it's, you know, whatever it might be, he's not done it yet, and he's demanding to be signed. It's got to do with
the money laundering, for sure.
Of course, yeah. It'll be something tied to that, obviously. But he says he doesn't want to anymore, and Rodriguez gets very stern, gets very in his face, and he's like, where did you think the money you were laundering came from? And the performance here from the lead actor, as he kind of like has a tear come down his cheek, and he basically just admits that he doesn't know, and it's almost like he didn't want to know, but now he's been confronted with the reality. He has to, like, now it's like, oh, I've turned a blind eye to this and been happily ignorant, but now that I know where it's coming from, I feel horrible about it. I feel like guilty, and I don't want to be a part of it. But now he's in deep with this guy, and this guy's like, getting all threatening and making it clear, and to the point at the end of the scene where he's like, when I come down there on like Tuesday or whatever day it's going to be, like those papers are going to be signed, aren't they? And he makes him repeat the word yes multiple times to get it across. You don't have an option in this, right? You work for me, and you're going to continue to work for me, and it will get threatening. It will become something. So
this is the one bit that I thought it really did come into play, that this is the trauma is the Holocaust, because him not looking at where the money is going is essentially equal, in smaller frame obviously, to the people who turned a blind eye during the Holocaust, the people who said like, oh, whatever's going on with the Jewish people, all those people who are being rounded up, it doesn't affect me, and therefore I'm not going to look into it. Like, he was getting the money, he didn't worry about where it was coming from, it didn't affect him. But now that it's been shoved in his face, now that he sees exactly what it is, and it's something that he has a deep moral standing against, he's got to question everything that came into it to begin with.
Yeah. So this is actually what leads to like him eventually going to see the woman in her apartment, because he kind of just wanders the streets after he leaves this place. We see him walking around the streets at night. We see him get on a train, and there's like another flashback moment here because he's so cramped in this train. The
train sequence is where we get the other part of his family, and it's so heartbreaking. Yeah,
it's basically just that he starts to feel really confined. He feels that people are looking at him, and he tries to escape down to the next train car. And when he walks in, and there's been quick flashes of what it was like on the train when they were being transported to Auschwitz,
the camp.
But when he opens the door to the next train car, and it just looks as like he's back in that train again. It's like he's opened the door, and there it is. It's all the Jewish prisoners on this train, and then we get this idea of his son just died on the train, like from starvation, from dehydration. It's tough
just
to
general
tell.
Exposure. But the thing that's so heartbreaking about it is the wife and him are separated. They are on like different sides of the train car, and they are packed in like sardines. Nobody can move. But he's had his son like propped up on his back. He's been holding him up like near his shoulders, piggyback style. And whatever happened to the son, whatever it was, the son just starts falling down, and the wife is calling out like, don't let him fall, don't let him, like, don't drop him, basically. But they're so packed in that he can't even like bend down to pick up his son. He's unable to even go down to do that. So his son is just laying there dead on the floor next to him, and he's just sobbing uncontrollably and screaming out in pain and anger. And it's like, God damn, such a good character bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, it hits like a ton of bricks, the scene. It, you know, because I think that's the thing, because when they did the scene with the wife, because we'd only seen one glimpse of her in that very first scene of the movie, I think it's reasonable to expect that the audience don't remember what she looks like, right? Which is why when they showed that scene of her with the Nazis, it did a quick flash to like that opening scene to sort of just like connect it in your head and go, oh, that's the wife, like that's his wife he's looking at, and they're making him watch this, like, because they're just, you know, because they're being just cruel because they can, on top of the being in the camp and everything else they're building up to doing, like they're being malicious in their treatment up until that point as well. So it like everything about it is like just about as horrific as you can possibly get. So, you know, that leads to him to go and have that scene with Mrs. Birchfield, and then, you know, as we're getting up towards the end of the movie, and because all the attempts have failed with Ortiz and things are getting worse and Saul's pushing him away, it gets to the point where we're getting into the last little like 15-20 minute stretch of the movie where he's agreeing to go through with this plan. They're going to rob the pawn shop. He's still insisting that no one, like, you have a gun for just to scare him, but no one gets shot, no one gets hurt.
Yeah, I do want to say the thing that pushes Ortiz over the edge, though, is when he comes back to the shop after everything else that's happened, he just starts making horrible deals. Like someone comes in with like some crappy ring or whatever like that, and he's like $20 for it instead of the normal $2. And then someone's like, oh, I'd like to buy back this watch or whatever. He's like, oh, $2. And then Ortiz runs over and be like, what? That thing says $12.50. Like, you can't just give it away for $2. And once again, he tries to get through. He's like, Saul, you just told me money's the only thing that matters. What are you doing? And that's where he basically turns to Ortiz and is basically like, you're not special to me. Like, I don't want you around. I don't want you here. You're scum just like the rest of humanity. You're nothing special. And that's what finally pushes him over to say, all right, if I'm not special, then I don't need to protect this man's money anymore.
It also, like, it's worth mentioning that Saul never went home. Like, he basically he was walking here. It even presents itself like he was just walking after he met up with the lady. And he just happens to be walking past the pawn shop and Ortiz is standing there, where he's like, oh yeah, I guess I better open up the store. Like, it almost feels like just happenstance that he came across it and was like, oh yeah, I guess we're doing that. If Ortiz
wasn't there, he would have walked right by it. Like, he would have kept going. You
know, there's an element of like, oh, giving up, and that plays out because so before we get the robbery attempt, there's a scene where Rodriguez shows up with his main man. You know, his henchman, not his boyfriend, just to be clear.
Yes.
And they come in and he's like, hey, are those papers signed? And he hands them over, but he looks at them and they're not signed. He's like, you're going to sign these. And when Saul does not respond, he punches them, and they come in and he's like, you're going to sign these? Like, well, what if I don't sign them? And he's got a bloody mouth at this point. He's like, what, are you going to kill me? And he's like, yeah, that's the idea. And he basically just, you know, he doesn't actually actively say, go ahead and do it, but very quickly Rodriguez gets the idea, wait, you want me to kill you? Like, that's what you're looking for. As
he's getting beat up, he keeps on saying, like, you're gonna have to kill me. Like, he does actually say that, but he doesn't like ask for it. He's not begging for it or anything like that. He's not talking about his guilt or anything like that. But Rodriguez, he does put it together and says like, oh, okay, like, I get it. You think this is an out for you. You think that this is like gonna be something that's gonna work in your favor. No.
Yeah, like, you'll die, but you won't die until you don't want it, right? Like, if I'm going to kill you, it's when it's the worst possible time where you actually want to live again. So no, and that's the last we see of him. He leaves, and then it's after that the trio come in. After Ortiz kind of sneaks in and unlocks a couple of like the gates, and then they come in. And he, Saul comes out of the bathroom, having heard them come in, looks at them and just says, what do you want? And they're like, the money, get the money out of the safe. And the safe's actually lying slightly open. and Saul, in like a moment of absolute defiance, shuts it so it locks in front of them, and like they're getting kind of pissy, and the one guy who's got the gun pulls out the gun, points it at Saul, and the tragic ending here is that Ortiz, realizing that they might actually shoot him, runs up and grabs the guy with the gun, but it spins him around and the gun goes off and shoots Ortiz. So our big dramatic ending of the movie is Ortiz stumbling out to the front of the store. The bad guys all run away because they know that the police are going to be coming now, and Saul comes out and kind of, you know, is by his side as he dies, and it's you know, this is like the big consequence of how he's treated people in his world. You know, he pushed this young man away so much that it led to this. And don't get me wrong, yeah, you can critique Ortiz a bit for turning to what he turned to. You can say that he's making mistakes, but that's not the point of this, though. The point of this is that he was actively like helped with Saul's behavior. He was pushed, right? He was making a genuine attempt from the very start of this movie. Ortiz was trying with a smile on his face to do the right thing, and was pushed at every single possible juncture by this man.
Yeah. But even then, his dying words to him are, "I said no shooting." Like, no matter what, I was still trying to protect you and trying to make sure you did not get hurt throughout all this. And it was only essentially his death wish for himself that forced Ortiz into this very same situation.
Yeah, and obviously, like, you know, I mean, maybe people, I mean, we obviously don't see a lot of his time in the camps, but it does make me wonder, like, you know, was there ever like someone looking out for him quite like this? You know, once he lost his family, did he feel just on his own? Is that something where that more came about after the end of that, you know, time in his life? But regardless, here at this moment, it kind of feels like he's seen the results of what he's been, and when he walks off and the credits start rolling as he just walks away, like, you know, Ortiz is dead, he stands up and he walks away kind of just distraught and traumatized all over again. And it's very much, I think, left open for interpretation. But I would like to think and lean towards the idea that he's maybe going to go and try. Like, this will, you know, change something about him. You know, maybe he'll choose to live again and not want to just end it for whatever life he's got left. I don't know. But
no, yeah, I mean, it's very much up in the air. The one thing that we skipped over is he does go back into his pawn shop. He gets behind the desk, and there's I don't know what it's called, but like a giant metal stake that he like shoves papers and old receipts through.
Yeah, it's a spike that you see it in like diners and stuff, like in old movies where they'll put the receipts on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he stands over there, he hovers his hand over top of it, and we just get this zoom in on his face, and you see like he starts shaking. He doesn't scream, he doesn't do anything else, but he just starts shaking, and then you just get a very quick glimpse of his hand off of the spike, but there's blood on the back of it, implying that he did fully impale his hand there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that this was just more a case of, like, we can only show so much, but we're not going to show the actual impalement, but he's definitely doing it. Like, I think the mood scene's making it clear that he's done it.
And I think that's there to imply this idea of, you know, his survivor's guilt, once again drawing its head of like, this guy died while I was the one who managed to survive, despite the fact that I was like actively trying to die there. There needs to be some level of recompense for that. There needs to be I need to be able to suffer somewhat, even similar to that. And so he makes himself suffer in that way before he can do it. Maybe I'm misreading that, but that's what I was picking it up as. It's just his overwhelming guilt forced him into that right then.
I mean, it's certainly about his guilt for sure. I almost thought I was wondering if there was maybe something specifically symbolic about it that I wasn't quite getting because I'm not religious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about the Judaism stuff. Obviously, Jesus, when he was on the cross, had stuff put through his palms to like nail him up there, but he's Jewish, so Jesus shouldn't really be a factor there.
Good detective work.
Yeah.
But I think I almost felt though like when he pulled his hand away, it was like a choice to stop, as opposed to I've done it now and it's over. It felt like a choice of like, no, I'm going to like, and my more like hopeful outlook at the end of the movie of him choosing to maybe try, right, whatever that means in this context for him. It felt like when he pulled his hand away, it wasn't a case of, oh, I've done my punishment now and that's me finished. It felt more like, no, I'm going to stop this, right? This is unhealthy and reckless. Like, it's like, I don't know. It felt like he made a choice to stop rather than it's just over now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. And there's also the idea of very early on, the whole reason he was doing this money laundering thing with Rodriguez is that he tells him, like, yeah, I'm taking in more product and giving out more money than I'm like getting money back. So the shop isn't profitable. It's not working. And that's the reason that he's doing this. So now that the Rodriguez thing is off the table, theoretically the shop is done. So maybe this is a thing where it's like, you know, I come back in, I give my last bit of blood for this shop. I give it one last piece of me, and then I leave it forever, instead of it being like something specific of guilt over Ortiz.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still probably lean more towards the guilt in the moment, but like it could be a symbolic thing with the shop as well. I wouldn't say no to that. I really want to compliment the performance as well, though, whilst Ortiz is dying, because the way that Saul kind of cries and like screams but doesn't actually make a sound, like, it's this silent kind of pain where that's what I was saying earlier when I'm like, when he like lets this fly here at the end of the movie, because of the way he's like presented himself and acted the entire time, this moment where he is just lost in this like very real pain, something that he's probably not shown to anyone in such a long time. You know, he's probably not let himself feel this much emotion or react to it, or, you know, because he's been bottling it up. He's been, you know, shoving it down in the trauma hole or whatever you want to call it. It really hit hard. Like, I think the performance here in this last like 5-10 minutes is like just next level stuff. Really, really good. So
yeah, and then just offhandedly, apparently there was an uncredited appearance right here at the very end by Morgan Freeman in his first film role.
Really?
Yep, he was as Saul is exiting his shop for the last time, there's a man smoking a cigarette right next to the door, and that's Morgan Freeman.
I can't say I noticed him, but this is a good like 25 years before like the first movie I saw with him in it. So I mean, he's obviously very, very young here. But fair enough. That's a interesting bit of trivia, along with all the other stuff this had going for it, with the all the first, you know, portrayals of certain things. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say, really? I mean, it's such a strong character study of a film. It feels like it's hitting on this really big topic. It feels like, especially when you consider the time it was made and just how like not I mean, it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like every week we're seeing new movies come out that are about like, you know, Holocaust survivors or talking about it, but it's not like weird for it to pop up in something, or weird for something to be symbolizing that or talking about that type of thing. It feels like a big deal in 1964 for a movie to come out and be so heavily and so like starkly addressing how this has made someone feel, right? You know, this survivor's perspective and just how traumatic it is and how much he like is cut off from the world because of it. It feels like, you know, it's like I said earlier, there's nothing glossy about this. There's nothing like smoothed over for Hollywood where it's like, yeah, it's really sad and we can all have a good cry, but ultimately in the end you'll have happiness. And I do think there's like a possible hopeful interpretation of the ending, you know, a lesson that he's learned, but it's not like Hollywood schmaltz at all.
We don't end the movie with him in the airport going on that European trip with his family, truly learning that life is like clearly that's not the direction or the tone that this movie ever was interested in telling.
No, of course not.
I think that I really do like not even the ambiguity of it. Like, the ambiguity is good to have in the end, but I think the more important part of it is just being able to go with this character and understand something that theoretically nobody should be able to understand, because that's the whole thing that he says. Everyone he talks to, everyone's like, oh yeah, no, like, you can talk to me, right? We can relate to each other. And he feels so separated. He feels so completely differentiated from all those other people. But us as the audience member, we're able to see into his mind. We're able to see those moments as he thinks of them. We're able to see how it impacts him. And being able to get into that mindset, maybe we truly still don't understand what he went through, but we understand it better than any of the other characters seem to.
Oh, of course, yeah. Obviously, in a real sense, we don't know what it actually feels like, but what you're basically just described there, and why I was laughing a little bit, is you just described art. That's what art is. The whole point of art is to be able to, like, give someone a chance to get a taste of what your experience has been or how you felt about something and get it across in your work. Now, whether that's, like, you know, a persecuted type of person and what they've went through, and maybe you can feel some empathy for it because you understand it in a better way because the art's able to display parts of it, if not at least a little nugget of it. That's basically what you were getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfamiliar for me. I don't really experience art. I relate to humanity through memes, so that's about all I got.
So yeah, I mean, the movie's very good. Like, I think, you know, I think all the movies we've done this season so far have been at least good. Even though, you know, there's been some quibbles here or there, or just some things that maybe stop them from feeling like, you know, like up to close to what 12 Angry Men was, which obviously was like a, you know, basically a masterpiece, frankly. This is, like, I still like 12 Angry Men more than this. Like, I think 12 Angry Men is, like, just about perfect. But this is an excellent film, and it's hard hitting. It feels like for what it is, you're probably thinking, oh, it's this drama about this pawnbroker, and he's very sad. This movie did not feel like it was dragging at any point. It feels well paced. It feels like I was always engaged in what's happening, because every step of the way, I'm kind of with this man who's very uncomfortable with the world around him, and I felt that the entire time. Which gave it kind of this almost uneasy feeling to it, and in a very intentional way that works for what the movie's doing.
Yeah, going into this, just looking at it on the surface level, I was kind of expecting it to be sort of like a Daniel Day-Lewis sort of movie, where it's like really pretentious, really like going for the Oscar, going for the stuff of just like, we're going to truly get into this mind of this character, and we're going to show how like they experience the world and in this deep and way that audiences are going to love. And I was pleasantly surprised when it got into it, and it doesn't paint this character as a martyr. It doesn't paint him as a hero. It paints him as a real person who went through this traumatic stuff and came out the other side a lot worse off for it. And it, like you said, it doesn't shave off the edges. It doesn't make it feel like it's sanded down for general audiences. It feels real.
Yep. So yeah, incredibly moving. You know, I think so far this is the winner of the season, and hopefully it's not the last time we'll say that. This is the standout so far, I think. Just before we get to the rating, there's a couple of things, more scenes that we should bring up. One of which is we didn't talk about when we come back to like the initial flashback. We see it's just, I mean, again, I think we all knew what it was, but it was basically just this is when they were taken, right? Like, you know, we see the motorbike with a few Nazis coming up, and like this is the moment they're going to be taken away. So there's that, and then during the ratings rundown, which we just recorded, David brought up a very good point, because I'd forgot to bring up the scene towards the end where he starts having little flashbacks of all the people that have been in the present day part of the movie, all the different customers, his mistress, Mrs. Birchfield, all that, and it's presented very similar to all his little flashbacks of his trauma from the Holocaust. So kind of implying that this is now a new entire swath of guilt that he gets to have going forward.
It's all the people that he lost that were trying to make connections to him that he's ended up pushing away. This is now a tragedy of his own design rather than the one that was forced by other people onto him. Yeah,
which doesn't make it like worse in the sense that obviously what happened in the Holocaust was way, way, way more horrific and darker. But it makes it like worse on a personal level to an extent because he did it. Like, he had control over this, and he let it, this wasn't done to him. Well, unless you sort of think about it in a knock-on effect of, well, the Nazis did this to him, but like, you know, that's
this is the thing where it's like all these people left because I was so torn off because of my trauma. Like, it's you can follow the dominoes, which is something where he did have control. He was able to make choices here, even within the trauma, that would have kept people around.
It gets back to like the old idea of like, you know, violence begets violence, hate breeds hate, that kind of thing. And obviously being a good person has been able to overcome that to some extent, and he's realizing at the end that on some level he's let those experiences turn them into something that he's now realizing he wishes he wasn't, and I think that's this is quite powerful. It's a really good final note for the movie to want to make. So, which maybe further adds to the idea that he is going to try be someone different. Whatever that is after the end of the film, it makes some amount of sense.
Yeah.
So,
but it's going to take more time to push through that new guilt as well. It's going to take more effort on his part.
I mean, I think maybe the most optimistic read you could have is that he's going to go and tell someone how he feels.
Yeah. Hoping.
So,
well, I hope optimistic is he goes to the hospital first and gets that wound looked at, and then goes and tells someone how he feels.
Two birds, one stone. Tell a doctor as he's getting patched up. Yeah.
Doctor, I need some antidepressants. What do you mean it's 1960s and we don't have those yet?
All right, David, what are you rating The Pawnbroker?
I mean, for anyone who checked out the ratings rundown, it's obviously going to be high. It's definitely earned that spot, and I wouldn't put it as my favorite Sidney Lumet film just because 12 Angry Men is that much of a classic, but if I hadn't watched that, it absolutely would be top of the season so far. So I think I'm going to end up with this one being... I'm really torn between the 9 and the 8.5. I'm going to say 9. I think it gets there for me. It just barely squeaks by, but I could point this out, and I think if people are looking for like a classic movie to sit down and watch, something that really has something to say, I would feel absolutely no hesitation in suggesting this. I think this is something that really is something special in that way.
It's also a very modern feeling movie, despite everything, because nothing about it feels aged, all in the fact that it's very much set in the 60s. Like, there's nothing cheesy about it. There's nothing that feels super old-fashioned with the way it handles things, and that's kind of what makes it so surprising and stark, is that you don't expect that from a movie from 1964. So feels ahead of its time in a lot of ways. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair. No, I think I'm going with a 9 as well. I think it's an excellent film. It has something to say. It's very effective in how it does so. It's speaking about something important, and it really gets into the mind of this character who's went through something traumatic, and makes you realize how that's rippled to who he is now, and how that ripples to the people around him. And yeah, I think it's a really powerful kind of story where he in no way is he ever a bad guy or a villain because he is struggling and feeling this way, but he still has like growth to go through to realize what his faults are and try and do something about them. So yeah, absolutely wonderful stuff. Yeah, cool. There you go. That is The Pawnbroker.
Inserting, does it make the cut?
Oh yeah, it makes a cut. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. The question is, we are at the level where some things that get a 9 from both of us get to the cut above. So do we think that it is at that level?
I don't know. That's the short answer is I don't know.
Same. It is like right on that level. I think that it's not something that I think is for everybody. That's the thing, is I think that this movie does have enough rough edges that it is going to bump some people off. I think that it is something that is not a general audience's sort of film. But for me and you personally, I think we recognize the artistry in it. We do that I think the argument for us could be made, yeah, it does make the cut, especially when like other films that did make the cut are things like Superman and Gladiator and stuff like that. I would absolutely put this in that same sort of echelon as those.
Oh, that's a weird sentence. In terms of how you feel about them, sure, but like very different types of movie. To be clear,
absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It stands above those even.
I mean, I think I'm okay with it being a cut above.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. I don't really feel like, I don't feel strongly between that and just making the cut. I think it's kind of in that sort of range where you could argue with me in either direction, and I think it would make sense to me. But if you want to put it in a cut above, we can put it in a cut above.
I mean, I agree. I'm in exactly that same sort of area, but I think that for me, it just barely edges out going above.
Okay. All right. And it goes indeed. So there you go. I'll tell you what's coming next time on Collector's Cut, and the next episode in Sidney Lumet season. So this is a 7-episode season. We're going on to episode 4 next week of the season, so we're hitting the middle. And it's another big one. In fact, it's the only one of this batch that I'd heard of, but I've not seen before. Well, actually, I think I may have seen parts of this in history class, actually, now I'm thinking about it. But it's called Failsafe, and it's very much the movie that largely I think, inspired Doctor Strangelove, because it's like the serious version of it in a lot of ways. Right. So looking forward to that next week. That's also from 1964, bizarrely. Sidney Lumet was putting in a lot of work.
Yeah, he was a busy boy. This was October 7th. Let me see if I can find when the other one came out.
I mean, Failsafe was probably earlier than in the year, I imagine, if that was October.
No, Failsafe was October is what I meant.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well,
yeah. I don't know. Why am I blanking on the name of the movie? I just watched it.
Pawnbroker.
There we go.
Because to be clear, I roughly put them in order, but I like for the two that are in the same year, I didn't check which one came out earlier in the year. I just put them back to back.
That's weird. So this one, Pawnbroker, actually premiered in June 1964, but only at a film festival. General audiences got it in April of 65.
Oh, interesting. That's the sort of thing where I don't care about it now because it's like way before my time. I only care about that distinction when I'm doing like the top 10 of the current year, because I'm like, I want to award things that I saw this year, but doesn't really matter now. It was 1964. It's fine.
No,
whatever.
Of course not.
All right. So anyway, that's what's coming next week on the show. Hopefully you'll join us for that. You can, of course, support the show and help keep it coming via Patreon or YouTube membership. You get an extra bonus show every month from me and David called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things of all time. Movies specifically, not just worst in general. It's not like we do an episode on, I don't know, the worst.
Pete just shows up and starts riffing on me. He's just tearing me apart in every episode.
Yeah, just a review about it. And this month, the person we are reviewing for being awful is, I don't know.
Elon Musk. Do it.
That's not a funny answer because he's actually awful. I was trying to think of like
it's a 3-hour-long epic.
Nah. I don't know. Queen Elizabeth. There you go. She was a right bitch, wasn't she? All right.
I thought for sure you'd go like Thatcher or something if you were going to go that level.
Well, no, because that's not because she's actually awful.
Okay.
The joke is picking someone who. I mean, I don't like Queen Elizabeth. I don't give a shit about her, but like. The joke is
someone beloved. Gotcha.
Yeah, or at least just not hated actively by everyone.
I would just pick somebody random then, just one of our subscribers. Just be like, oh yeah, today we're going to be riffing on Cindy.
Anyway, that's the show, everyone. Thank you for joining. You can, of course, so supporters get a bonus content, ratings rundown, extra reels, all that stuff, as well as stuff for the other shows like Streams After Midnight. But that is us. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.